Welcome to the Afternoon Constitutional. Thank you for letting us be of service to you this Friday morning, and we appreciate it coming to you. A lot going on in the world of constitutionality and rule of law this afternoon. We've got a special guest to kind of take us into this with the perspective of a community that knows a little bit about what is going on. And, of course, we speak about the indictment of President Donald J. Trump, 37 counts, but most notably from your humble reporter's standpoint is the issue of the Espionage Act being used. The Espionage Act is an interesting paradigm to be used in this case because I believe this shows that this is still the Steele dossier. This is still Russian collusion. This is still the idea that President Trump is somehow an agent of the Russian government and working with the Russian government to undermine national security in some way, shape, or form. And this then becomes the Ukrainian phone call whistleblower case. Because, again, that was based on the allegations that President Trump was a Russian agent, and they had, quote, proven this. But, again, this is all in the light of the Durham report, which says unequivocally that he wasn't a Russian agent. And actually, none of the stuff that you saw in the Steele dossier was, what's the word? Oh, there's a word for it. True. Yes, true was the word for it. So none of that was actually true, and that they should have known that. But they're going ahead with this indictment anyway, because now they say they have these national security documents at the president's home at Mar-a-Lago, and he shouldn't have had them, and he even admitted having documents he shouldn't have had. The president sometimes, as many heroic characters in history, can be their own worst enemies. So in this audio tape they apparently have of him talking with some reporters, he says, hey, look here, I've got documents that I shouldn't have, and you shouldn't see these probably. I can't. Hey, Tommy, can I declassify these? And he said, well, you can't anymore, sir. So at some cases, you wonder. I picked up a column while we wait for our guest, George Williams from Project 21, to join us today to go into the reaction. Now, George is one of their experts at Project 21 on law enforcement justice and the rule of law, having been a law enforcement officer for many, many years in, of all places, New Jersey, where there is enough folks who I know who live in the Garden State who have told me that movie Copland with Harvey Keitel and some Stallone fella, that movie Copland was closer to a documentary than you really, really want to know. But a wonderful column while we wait for George to join us on the program, written by Jordan Boyd. We had reached out to Jordan through the publisher that she works for, that is the Federalist Papers. And, not the Federalist Papers, it is the Federalist Magazine. The column is titled, "The Indictment Isn't Just about Trump, it's about wrong think." Every time, and this echoes a theme, and yes, you can say, Joe, you're just reading this because it reiterates something that you've said. And I've said this since returning from Washington, D.C. In 2017, long before Charlottesville became a punchline, an epithet, or the first line of President Biden's election campaign. My wife and I went up to the inaugural for President Trump because, honestly, having grown up in Queens, New York myself, and sporting an unusual haircut of my own, I figured, we got to stick together. So I went up there to the nation's capital, and the people who invited us kind of ghosted us. They said, "Oh, I can't leave your tickets at will call." Really, you think? But so we never actually got onto the grounds for the inaugural, but we were up in D.C., and we certainly saw plenty of what was going on there. And I said to my wife at the time, I said, this is crazy. The man hasn't even taken office yet. And then we were sitting in Union Station. There's a Pizzeria Uno at Union Station in Washington, D.C., and we're up there and we're having something to eat before we head on home. We had to catch a train to Vienna. And so what? I'm the only one who thinks to park at the Vienna train station and take the metro in because it's less expensive than parking in D.C. Really? I'm the only one who thinks that? You all need to have grown up in the city I did, where hardly anyone ever drives into the city. But anyway, let me go back into this piece that Jordan wrote, and I think it's terrific because I said this on January 22nd, I think it was, the first broadcast I had after the inaugural in 2017. I said, all this regarding Donald Trump is about you. It's about you. Anyone who stands up to the authoritarians, anyone who stands up and says, hang on a second here, anyone who questions authority, anyone who questions the status quo is going to fall prey to this behavior. These protests that we saw, Madonna, I feel like blowing up the White House and all of that was the beginnings of it. And then the week hadn't even gone by when already General Flynn was in trouble because FBI agents mysteriously showed up at his office and said, no, we just want a bagel and a cup of coffee. Is the mess open? I'm sorry, the galley. It's the galley at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. And from that point on, the game was afoot, as Sherlock would say. So the game was afoot because they wanted to stop people who were not pre-approved through the system. This guy came out, he was not from the Republican Party. They hadn't vetted him. He hadn't been a county precinct captain, and they hadn't run a phone bank or held a county office or anything like that. So they had no way of knowing this guy. They had no strings attached to this guy. So this was dangerous. He was a wild card. And then he opens his administration, if you recall, and I go back to the lunch my wife and I were having at the pizzeria in Union Station. I looked, they were covering everything, and because they had C-SPAN on, they were carrying some of the nerd prom stuff. So they cut live to the old executive office building where President Trump, he's been sworn in as president, is signing the orders to nominate his cabinet secretaries. And he's doing this very ceremonial thing, and I said to my wife, I said, that's interesting. And it stuck out to me. I said, that's interesting there. And I said, that's very Trump-ish. And she said, what is that? I said, notice who the two people are standing next to him. And remember, where you stand in places like Washington and Hollywood is very, very prime real estate. Okay, I think we've got George Williams connected with us now through George. There he is. Okay, now we got George Williams is on with us from Project 21. Let me finish the story real quick. So I noticed, I said, we're watching this guy nominate his cabinet secretaries, and who is occupying the most prime real estate in this signing? It was Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer. And I thought, this is typically Trump. He tries to make the deal. This was the beginning of his political art of the deal. He was going to try to win over Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer. And I think this was his naivete as it was. It probably sent off Reince Priebus and Mitch McConnell anyway, and it wasn't going to win over Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer. So now, as I mentioned, law enforcement veteran and expert in the world of justice and law enforcement for Project 21, the Black Leadership Council for the National Center for Public Policy, as well as veteran of the U.S. Marine Corps. He is George E. Williams. George, thank you so much for taking some time out with us today. How are you doing, sir?
Thank you. I'm glad to be on the air with you. Had a few problems, but it's worked out. I'm on now.
It's just technology. I've learned that, and the things that we can do these days that we couldn't do in the past is remarkable. So, I used to have to send a satellite truck to your house and have them take over your house for a weekend. So this is a lot better than that, George. So, you were part of a very wonderful piece at nationalcenter.org under the banner of Project 21 regarding this. And I was bringing up also Jordan Boyd's piece in the Federalist. The indictment isn't just about Trump, it's about you. And I think that's been the message since 2017. That was the point of the story I was saying, is that they've been after the outsider, the person who didn't go through their vetting process from the get-go. But what is the reaction in the community with in the black community regarding the indictment? 37 counts, including they're still going after he's a Russian agent stuff, George.
It is totally unbelievable, uncalled for, and it's the highest form of corruption that I have ever witnessed. And I spent over 14 years in foreign countries, and I tell you what, it has never been this bad, and it's being done by the White House and the Democratic Party. They're all in this together, and I call it the Great Conspiracy.
Well, and you've seen some of these third world, what President Trump's once called beep hole countries. You've served our country in there and helped them try to liberate themselves. Compare this to some of the regime changes in Southeast Asia and places that you've served in the military.
Well, I spent 6 years in Africa, and I spent 6 years in Brazil, in South America, covering a couple different countries from Brazil. And those people do what they want. I mean, the government people. If you talk about them, they're going to go after you. Look what's happening in Russia now with what they're doing over there in Russia. And the same way in Nigeria, they just had an election May, and it was one of the most corrupt elections that I've ever seen. And they do what they want, and that's what the Democratic Party and the White House is doing. Remember, Biden is in charge of the Attorney General. He's in charge of the FBI, and they all work for him, and they are doing this to protect him and the Democratic Party because they don't want to see President Trump run in 2024, and that's what it's all about.
Well, I believe we actually caught Rachel Maddow last night on MSNBC saying as much, that this is what they have to do to keep President Trump from running again because they're so panic-stricken by this. And again, you could be a Trump guy, a DeSantis guy, you could be a Mike Pence, you could be the 2 or 3 Chris Christie guys. It doesn't matter to me right now. The point is that if you can do this to Donald Trump, you're going to do this to Chris Christie, to Mike Pence, to George E. Williams, to Joe Thomas. It doesn't matter. It's the old show us the man, we'll show you the crime paradigm. And it begins with the true election fraud, which was that you couldn't be anywhere to see the votes being counted because COVID. And that, I think, violates the primary right of the citizens to be in full faith and credit of our election system. Right, George?
Yeah, that is correct. And they're using that as a wedge against the Republicans and for their own benefit. That's what they're doing. And there's no doubt about that. And what we have to do is be brave, okay? Get some guts. You notice the Democrats, the legislators, they're always voting 100%, except Senator Manchin, but they always vote 100%. And we Republicans, we're losing some of our votes, and they're afraid. So we can't do that. We can't allow them to do that.
Well, is there something, and earlier this week we were talking about, because YouTube, where the main distribution channel of this program off the broadcast, is at least allowing for discussions about the 2020 election and whether or not every valid voter casts just one valid vote. But on that subject matter, when you see communities that are dominated or just gone after by these Democratic Party vote grabbing, vote harvesting machines, they target communities that have for decades suffered under the public policies of the leftists. The poverty goes up. A friend of mine asked me, why are they still digging up white supremacy? I said, because look at the economies of these inner cities. If
Right.
they didn't have something else to blame it on, it would have to wind up being, and this was something President Trump did. He went into Detroit and said, how's it going since 1964? And that panicked them. And that's why they had to gin up white supremacy. Again, I feel, George.
Well, I feel the same way. There are a whole bunch. You know, they talk about white supremacy, and but they never talk about Black Lives Matter. They
Mm-hmm.
never talk about Antifa. Okay, we have to talk about it. They never do. It's always white, but that's what plays into the black community.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's what plays. You got somebody like Al Sharpton and
Mm-hmm.
Jesse Jackson and all of those individuals, and a lot of your Congress folks. The first thing they do is, this is racist. This is racist. Critical race theory. That's racist.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, trying to teach that in our schools. You're trying to teach minorities to hate whites. And I ask anybody, were you in the Civil War? Were you back in in the 20s in
Mm-hmm.
Alabama or Mississippi? No. Then why should you be blamed? So
Right.
that's what they're doing, led by the NAACP also, okay, which was started in 1909 by a white woman.
Yep.
But
Well,
now they are an auxiliary
and
for
they're
the
all
Democratic
profiting.
Party.
Yeah, and they're all
Yeah.
making big money. I mean, we've seen the bank accounts. Some of these folks who have made off with multiple millions of dollars from Black Lives Matter contributors, and
Right.
and infuriating some of the folks who gave money to the organization, thinking it was about Black Lives Mattering.
Right. Black Lives Matter only matter if someone in blue, okay, kill a person, a black person.
Mm-hmm.
But every day in America, in these urban cities, you have black on black crime. Do they get out and talk about that? No,
Mm-hmm.
no, they don't, because that is part of their scenario.
Right.
Okay, it pits white against black and black against white. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
and so that's why we were formed to fight that, and that's what we're doing.
Well, and talk about that. So now bring this full circle, because now that we've talked about the Trump indictment, if you can do this to somebody who held the office of president of the United States, and you've already told the communities of color that the police can arrest you for whatever they feel like, and ignore crimes that you may have committed for whatever reason you like, it really creates this crazy made street culture of I just have to be friends with the authorities so that I can get away with whatever I want, and that's not justice. That's anarchy, isn't it, George?
It's anarchy, and it's a strategy. I used to be a police officer, okay, for 6 years before I became a federal agent, and I can tell you, I would not want to be a police officer today. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to go back to the Democratic Party, how they are lying, because they're saying it's Republicans who want to defund the police. It is not the Republicans. Look at all the videos of Democrats calling for defunding of the police.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you can't believe a word they say, and I really, really mean that. And we can't do without police.
Well, and that's what's happening is our justice system has become an old boys network, which is like it was in the 20s, and it's much to the peril of anyone, because rule of law means, hey, don't break the law, and if you break the law,
Right.
you shouldn't have a hall pass, and I'm wholeheartedly for that. It doesn't matter who you are. If anyone can grow up to be the president, any president can also be guilty of crimes as well as anyone else. But the law has to be concrete. You mentioned being a federal agent, George. What do you hear from friends of yours that were federal agents with you? Because they really are in the crosshairs of this as the group who was weaponized to create this campaign for 6 years now against President Trump.
Right. But you must understand, and the audience, your audience must understand, it is not the rank and file federal agents. It is the political appointees that are breaking all the laws. Okay, the criminology of the political appointees. They're the ones where the information come down because as a federal agent, you're quasi military organization. So you listen to orders and you listen and you take orders, but the orders are coming down from the top. Okay. And
Mm.
those are political appointees. It's not the rank and file like in Mobile or in New Jersey.
Mm-hmm.
It's not those FBI agents. It comes down, even the raid at Mar-a-Lago, they came down from D.C. They didn't even let Miami know.
Right. They didn't let the
That gives
local.
you, right, right. They didn't even want to let the local FBI know. They brought them from D.C.
Greg,
Okay.
Greg is watching in Richmond, and he just texts to us. He says the real White House mess is sitting behind the Resolute desk right now. I'll show myself out, and that's the truth. I mean that is the mess right now. But it's also a corruption of the system where so much of this is dictatorially coming through the Oval Office and their departments, the IRS and the EPA and the FBI and all these directorates that are at the beck and call of just one person. And I know after Queen Elizabeth died, some people said maybe America should try a constitutional monarchy. As we already have a monarchy, we just vote every
We
4
already
years.
had it.
And so George,
We already had it.
When how do we get that trust back? Because you talk about the rank and file. These are the whistleblowers that all of a sudden the Democratic Party seems ready to assail and tell you where their house is, and crucify these whistleblowers, career law enforcement people like yourself who have come before the Jim Jordan Committee and said, "Hey, hang on." I mean, this very document that they found with all the Biden family connections and the dozens and dozens of bank accounts that we're not supposed to know about, but is there. And funny enough, there are no indictments coming about that.
Well, you have to understand this. Mark Garland is the head of the Justice Department.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Director Ray works for him.
Yeah.
Garland works for the president. All right.
Mm-hmm.
So, are they going to do anything to hurt the president, their boss? No, no, no. And like I said, these are all political appointees. So the only way we're going to get rid of them is to get rid of that whole bunch in the White House. And to me, put a Republican there, put Trump back in there, because he did a fantastic job in his 4 years.
Should the FBI field offices fall under a different jurisdiction than the centralized Department of Justice? Should it be fragmented? Should the FBI branches, the field offices, have more autonomy? Or because it seems like somewhere along the line, that's where this corruption kind of gets in there, where even the field offices, you mentioned they didn't even tell the Miami field office they were coming down to raid Mar-a-Lago. But these offices should be where the friction comes in when one person says, "Yeah, we're going to go get this guy." Somebody in some other office says, "Well, hold it, you haven't shown me the proof."
No, I don't think that would work.
Okay.
I think that would cause chaos. Okay. What has to be done is to get rid of those, especially the top 5 appointees. Okay, get rid of them and put somebody there. I would say put somebody who is a retired person in law enforcement.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, the president could have put someone like that. I remember when they first formed DEA, they had they put retired law enforcement people in charge.
Mm-hmm.
The agencies can be run a lot better, and that's what you have to do. You have to get these political appointees out of there.
Yeah.
And it's going to continue until they're out of there.
And I guess it goes back to what our justice system is supposed to be about, is that, you have the right to live your life freely until you violate someone else's rights, and then you should be punished for it. I mean, that is the basis of our legal system, isn't it, George?
It is. However, it's strictly on a partisan basis.
Yeah.
If you have a U.S. attorney, say in New York, a U.S. attorney, not a state's attorney. When I was stationed in New York, Giuliani was our attorney, U.S. attorney. down in the Southern District of New York. He
Mm-hmm.
was fantastic. He supported the agent. Even Chris Christie for Northern Jersey, he was a U.S. attorney, and he supported us fantastically. He changed since then,
Yeah.
but it all depends because the orders come down from the top. Okay,
Does the
the
FBI
orders come down from the top.
does the FBI have too much authority over local law enforcement? I was told that a lot of local law enforcement agencies rely on federal monies to almost the tune of 20%. That's a big nut to cover if you're going to try to push back against some FBI director that says, "Hey, we're taking over here. You guys stay out of our way."
Well, most of the money for funding for law enforcement comes from the Congress. Okay, it
Mm-hmm.
comes from Congress. So, and federal law enforcement creates a lot of task force with local and state. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
and so the feds support that, but that comes out of the federal budget. Um, I don't think that has too much to do with local law enforcement conducting their own operation. If they can't do it, then they ask the feds for help. Okay, like the laboratory and
Mm-hmm.
maybe human resources and all that. But
Right.
normally, that they have their own budgets, and it won't affect them that much.
So speaking of effect, what impact does this have on the street level? We already see the inner cities getting torn apart with crime as it is, and district attorneys and Commonwealth attorneys here in Virginia saying, "Yeah, I'm not going to enforce robbery crimes under a certain dollar amount. It's just survival crime." We hear all about this. That's, I think, really damaging the poorest community. If I had, I don't make a ton of money, so if I had my car stolen, it's a bigger hit on me than it is if I'm making a professor's salary at UVA. What's the resonance of this indictment all the way down, not just in the black community, but all the communities that are struggling to make ends meet, do you think, George?
I have a lot of friends in the FBI, other federal agencies.
Mm-hmm.
They are embarrassed. Some of them are quitting, finding
Mm-hmm.
other jobs because they are embarrassed and they don't like what's going on. So the effect of that is it's like an accordion. It goes way out. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
and they were talking about hiring 87,000 or 84,000 IRS agents. Forget it. They don't have enough agents now because of the qualification
Right.
that are needed. Okay, so um,
Well, and
we just don't want them to lower the standards.
Well, sure, and that's and I think it's on my industry as well. Right now, there's been more coverage of smoke coming across the northern border of the United States than the humans coming across the southern border of the United States over the past 3 days, and it's a shame because that's the bigger human tragedy than the smoke coming across from Canada. George, I appreciate it. Last thoughts: does this get better, or does this still flame up in a trial that very well may be taking place while the primary elections are going on?
Well, one good thing about where the prosecution, if there is a prosecution, will be conducted, it's in Miami, the Southern District of Florida.
Mm-hmm.
It's not New York or it's not D.C., where it's strictly Democrat,
Yeah.
from the judges and the jurors. So that's the good thing. And where it's going to go, we don't know, but I don't think it's going to hurt Trump. I really don't.
Yeah, it
I
doesn't.
think it's only making his base and creating more people coming into his base because they see this as one-sided.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, even some Democrats have told me, "Man, this is a shame what they're doing to him."
Yeah, and I think that's kind of what happened in 2016. A lot of the Democrats who said, I'm not voting for Hillary, especially after what happened
Right.
to Bernie Sanders, and
Right.
that was Trump's coalition at the time.
Right. You must also understand that there was a lot of cheating in the 2020 election.
Oh yeah,
A lot.
But we can't.
Of cheating.
They wrote rules that kept us from watching it. So
Right.
that's
Right. And look at right now. I know we got to go, but look at right now with the letter and the Biden situation. You haven't heard that on
no,
on local
absolutely not.
media, have you?
No.
Mainstream media. You haven't heard about it.
Nope. We keep trying to tell people about it, and we keep getting told it's a conspiracy theory.
Right.
At some point, somebody's going to get arrested for this conspiracy theory.
Correct.
Unfortunately, it may only be Hunter, and then somebody will pardon him. George E. Williams, Project 21. Read his piece and the parts written about this and other things at nationalcenter.org. Bless you, sir, and have a wonderful weekend.
All right. Thank you.
And thank you for tuning in to our program. Once again, we'll be back Monday afternoon. Like I said, we've reached out to this wonderful reporter, Jordan Boyd, with The Federalist, who gets it, that this isn't so much about Donald Trump as it is about you and me and anyone else that may stand out and try to, knock over some tables, let's just say. So on behalf of all of us here at the Afternoon Constitutional, we appreciate it. I hope you have a wonderful weekend. Stay clear of any indictments. Don't take home any documents you shouldn't take home. And if you have given yourself permission to take home those documents, make sure you have that in writing and that the next guy in your office hasn't taken away those authorities. So until Monday afternoon at 3 or Monday morning at 5 a.m. for my radio audience as well, I'm Joe Thomas. So long, and thanks for all the fish.